Hey, romance fans! You're watching Romance Rewind, a talk show on the Reader Seeks Romance channel that chats with romance authors about the romance movies from the 80s, 90s, and aughts that inspired their careers and novels. I am Liz Donatelli, and my co-host is Tiffany Curran. Our guest is debut romance novelist JILLIAN Graves, author of paranormal monster romance Titan, a gargoyle daddy dom romance. We are discussing the movie that inspired JILLIAN's romance writing career, 1999 classic teen rom-com, 10 Things I Hate About You. Hi, JILLIAN.
Hi, JILLIAN. Hello.
Thank you for joining us. Hello, Tiffany.
Hello. I'm excited to be here. I love this movie, 10 Things I Hate About You, so I am very excited to do a deep.
So, JILLIAN, I'd like to kick it off with you telling us why. Why 10 Things I Hate About You? In which ways did that inspire your romance writing career?
In which ways did it not? Honestly, it's we're going to start off on a little bit of like an aside of I'm 5'11", so I'm quite tall, and I've always tall. And one of the actresses who I have just been obsessed with forever is Allison Janney. So she is like, I think she's like 6 feet tall or something like that.
Oh, wow.
And so anytime I see Allison Janney in a movie, I'm immediately like connected to her. Like I love her. I loved her in The West Wing. I love her in this, which is even more perfect because she is a romance novelist in this movie.
Yes.
You know, she's a little bit of like a stereotype in the way that they write her, but like, I don't know, unabashedly so. And
She's fun.
Yeah, it just makes me really, I'm like, oh, I want to be Miss Perky. She's got outfits. She's very focused on the correct word choice for a Bolin member, which I very much connect to. Genuinely, like when I think of being writing romance, I think of her. I was watching at the very end of the movie, they do a bunch of like bloopers.
Yes.
And one of the bloopers is her. Oh,
yeah, you should. It's funny.
Yeah.
Is this a post-credit?
No, it's in the like happening behind the credits.
Oh, I guess
They show outtakes. You just gave up on it, but we, as true fans, said, let's see what's going to happen during the credits. And you got a fun little, as you were saying, JILLIAN, Allison Janney scene.
Yeah, tell me about those outtakes.
Most of the outtakes are just cast members kissing each other. Is like just making out with each other. And then the Allison Janney one, which that scene must have gotten completely cut because we don't see even a hint of it in the movie, is Kat is going around the corner with Bianca and they run into Miss Perky, like clothes half off with like another teacher who is like in his boxers.
And a serious embrace and like kissing and everything.
And so I just like loved that. Like she was the stereotype of like a romance author might be like a lonely cat lady who isn't like, I don't know. And I just like that she is a cat lady, but she's getting like she is not
she's getting it in. She's getting it in the hallway, apparently. So a lot of different places. So good for her.
I watched this movie. So it's 1989. I would have been in 7th grade, I think. And so he was like the first person who I watched this movie. I was obsessed with him. Now rewatching it last night makes a lot of sense for how I write my heroes and heroines. I think he was the first person who I would like actor that I had like a crush on and like could sort of fangirl over and like wanted to see in more romantic movies and books and things like that. Titan, a Gargoyle Daddy Dom Romance is the first in the Romancing Histone series. It is, the whole series is a paranormal monster series with gargoyles and mostly humans. And they're all very kink focused. So they're all going to kind of focus on a different kink.
That's interesting.
Our heroine is Jules. She is a former child star who is now a sugar baby, and she's in a legal battle to get her money back, which was stolen by her manager and her mother. And she's sort of in a desperate place when she meets Titan, and she's thinking, here is my savior. This is my way to fund the last of my legal battle. And of course he turns out to be a gargoyle, but lucky for her, he
That's
loves
life.
her anyway. So he needs her help in finding a magical relic that she has some intel on, and they join forces to sort of accomplish both their goals, but making sure they have some very, very dirty sex along the way.
Titan's tail is a scene stealer.
I got many texts from Liz, like, there's a tail in this. You've got to read this tail. I'm like, okay, I'll get to the tail.
Coming up with the series and figuring out like what kinks I wanted to like apply to them. It was thinking about like what kind of monster is a gargoyle, like what elements are in that, like they're stoic, they're always in a grouping, so they're sort of like family related, and they're loyal, and they're protective. They can be a little stalkery, because they're always
the good kind.
Yes, it's a fine line, but in this case it was the good kind.
They could be it's going to be animalistic, a little primal. And so when like thinking of what aspects to like pull out of the gargoyle to play with kink, and then also like what elements in their body parts that they have, how can I mix and match them and use them, to their highest potential.
I've never read a monster romance, so it was very interesting for me. I mean, I read romance and erotic romance, but I've never read a monster one before, and I was like, whoa, they're doing some interesting things with body parts here that I just was not expecting. But it was very good. The sex was very good. It was just like, it was an eye-opening experience for me.
Yeah.
So thank you for that.
I'm into the genre. I'm into Titan. It's a delicious read. I highly recommend.
I'm not sure if I saw it in theaters or if I saw it like, on TV pretty, quickly afterwards. I do remember being into it right from the beginning. It was always my favorite, like teen rom-com. I'm sure in part it happened because it just came at the perfect time of me being in middle school. I think I was just into it because one, Heath Ledger did it for me, and Stiles, I think, plays a really like a heroine that we don't normally see in teen rom-coms. They might be clumsy, they might be the nerdy girl, but they're never like actually angry. And she was in a way that made so much sense to me as like a tween. I watched it last night, and when she backs up into Joey's car, just ram right in his car, and I just thought, we don't see enough of that.
We need more anger. We need more girl anger. I saw it when I was younger, but I remember seeing it in a theater. I don't remember if it was with friends or not, but I saw it in the theater for sure. And the funny thing was I was excited about it for Joseph Gordon-Levitt, because I was really into Joseph Gordon-Levitt at the time. So it's funny that you mentioned Heath Ledger, because I was like, it's Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Like, that's why I wanted to see the film. It changed throughout the film who my fave was, but I just remember like really looking forward to it. And then when I watched it, just really liking it, because it's really just quick and breezy, right? And so and even now as an adult watching it, I felt the exact same ways.
I actually don't remember much. When this movie came out, in March 31st, 1999, to be precise, I was 22. So I know for sure I did not see that movie in the movie theater, probably because I saw the commercials and figured it was for people much younger than me, is probably why. Yeah. But I did eventually watch it. All I could guess is that I rented it from Blockbuster is probably what happened. And when I watched it, I don't recall it being memorable, except for a couple of the scenes we'll mention later on. I slightly recall feeling a little confused because it gets kind of convoluted with all the people involved and all the plans being hatched. But I rewatched it a couple of days ago on Disney Plus. And Same. I very much enjoyed the romance between Patrick and Kat. I have to say, though, I didn't think it really aged very well as far as the dialogue. certain things stated and things. I was like, oh boy. I mean, how many more PMS jokes can we have in this movie? But I did overall, I was struck by how much more endeared I was to their love story than I was the first time. Some Things I Hate About You is inspired by the work of Shakespeare, The Taming of the Shrew. I'm not going to go into what that's about, but there's a shrew that needs to be tamed. We open at Padua High School, which I believe is in Seattle. I don't know why.
It was Seattle. Yeah, it was Seattle. I remember seeing them like, I don't remember that many movies actually taking place in Seattle back in the day. Right. So watching, I was like, that's Seattle. I was like,
but it makes sense because Seattle is like, kind of known as dark and stormy and rainy, which kind of matches Kat. So, her personality. Fair. All right. So I forgot all about this character, but we open on the guidance counselor, Miss Perky, played by Allison Janney, who, as we know, Jillian is a huge fan of. After seeing her in those few opening scenes, she was totally underutilized. And we suspect, probably there were a lot of scenes on the cutting room floor. Yep. She's hilarious and deeply inappropriate in how she handles the students. But we learned that she's writing a romance novel.
And I love that. I thought that was so, for me, I remember watching it thinking it was so original because we didn't really, usually you see guidance counselors and they're caring and et cetera. And she's like, I don't really care. I'm writing my sex book, like this is what you have to do. And I remember watching it again thinking like, this is already setting up the movie to be something slightly different. That's how I took it, like the character wise. But I found her to be very entertaining.
I guess the point of the whole guidance counselor scene is so we can meet the main characters who all pass through her office. So we have Tiffany's favorite, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, playing Cameron James. It's his first day at school. Let me tell you, I always love when a movie begins with "it's the first day of school" for this character, because then we get to see everything fresh through this character's eyes.
Yeah.
We meet Patrick Verona, played by Heath Ledger. He's the rebel outsider who smokes cigarettes and hangs out at biker bars playing pool. And there's a number of rumors about him because he's like this mysterious, nobody really knows. People say he was in prison. The one that was a popular rumor, he sold his own liver on the black market for a set of speakers. And we meet Kat, Julia Stiles, the antisocial, nonconformist, angry girl. Everyone loves to say how angry she is.
This was so, I feel like, stereotypical of that time. We meet her, she's driving up in like, I don't know, like a 1967 Chevy or whatever it was. I don't know cars. What I feel like back in the day when those movies came out, like people that were rebels always drove those kind of cars. Yes. They always drove those cars. I'm like, where are these cars coming from? How do they get them? They all drove the same type of car. Yeah. So when I saw that again, I'm like, she's clearly a rebel. She's in that car.
She's a rebel. Although I be honest, like the car did not look safe to drive. So I think it's okay to be a rebel, but drive a safe car.
And so Cameron gets a tour guide, who becomes his best friend. I forgot his name though in the movie. What's his name?
Michael. Michael, he's kind of a nerdy dude played by David Krumholtz?
I think so, yeah. Yeah. Michael gives him a tour around campus, pointing out the different groups of students. Totally reminded me of Clueless, where it's just like, here's this group of kids, here's that group of kids, here's that group of kids. I'm like, that's Clueless, man.
Clueless and Mean Girls. It's kind of like become this trope with these teen movies that there's someone who's going to tell you all about the social strata.
They're such nonsense cliques. Like they're not like
yes.
It's not like here's the jocks, here's the cool kids. Here's the coffee kids.
Yes.
Here's cowboys. There's cowboys. To me, one of my favorite things about this movie, and like what I really like was paying attention to last night, is how campy it is.
It is.
Yes, it is.
And that's an element of it, I think, is like there's just cowboys and they're in the whole thing.
Yes. It is weird. What I did like about this scene is that we meet Bianca for the first time, Kat's younger, popular sister. And I remember watching this for the first time because one of the reasons why I really wanted to see the movie was because of her. She was Alex Mack. Did anybody watch Alex Mack back in the day? That's how I knew her. It was like a show on, I don't know if it was, what was it, Nickelodeon or one of those channels where she, I don't know, I think she has powers or something or other. I think she was near a power plant and then suddenly she got powers. Anyway, the point is,
I didn't even know that. Okay.
you got to look it up. I remember
Okay.
seeing her. I'm like, it's Alex Mack.
And the actress is Larissa Olenek.
What's funny is that Bianca and Cameron were actually on the show Third Rock from the Sun together, and they played love interest. So I was like, oh, once again, they're playing a love interest. So it's kind of cool.
As soon as Cameron sets eyes on Bianca, game on, he's in love and now wants to date her. And we also meet Joey Donner. So Joey Donner, the self-absorbed, super popular teenage model.
It was Andrew Keegan. Was
Yes,
anybody else
Andrew
a
Keegan.
huge Andrew Keegan fan? I was like, it's Andrew Keegan.
No,
I think he might have been
never-
no.
No. His hair always bothered me.
Oh my God. Liz. Jillian, did you like Andrew Keegan or were you not an Andrew Keegan fan?
I'm not a huge Andrew Keegan fan, but I do remember him in a lot of things.
Okay.
He has a cult now, by the way. You
Oh,
guys-
really?
What?
For what? Why? What has he done? No offense.
LA area or like maybe more Northern California, I'm not sure. And it's sort of like just an overall spiritual community, but they've been like raided by like.
You mean a cult? I thought you meant like, they were a fan of his
No,
movies.
she meant,
but like
no, I
a cult.
cult. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Oh, that's sad. Jesus, what's happening to these people? I was like, oh, he has fans. And you're like, no, it's a cult.
So
It's like a bad thing.
I knew there was something about him. That's why I never gravitated towards him. It was his hair. It was all in his hair.
Those black
It
and white
told
photos,
everything.
something was suspicious about it.
Wow.
Okay, yeah. So we
Okay.
meet all the characters, and at that point, Joseph Gordon-Levitt says, I want to get to know Bianca. I want to teach her French, even though I don't speak French for some reason.
By this point in the movie, we've established that Kat is viewed by everyone, in the words of Miss Perky, as a heinous bitch. Like she tears down like all the prom flyers and all these different, like she's not into establishment. She thinks everyone is kind of like just ridiculous and she's above it. And we also learned that she hates Joey, which we'll learn out why in a little bit later on, but she is just not someone that is viewed as likable or approachable. But the teachers don't give her a break either. The teachers agree with the students and give her a hard time, so she always ends up in detention and whatnot, or at the guidance counselor's office. But she's actually ahead of her time, like that. She really is. Now she would be celebrated.
Well, that's actually true. Yeah, that's probably true.
As being, against the patriarchy and, for just, social justice and fairness and, but yeah, no, she really takes a lot of in this movie from
does.
Teachers and students. Eventually we go home with Kat and Bianca and we meet the dad, Mr. Stratford.
Before we meet the dad, I think we want to
yeah.
just say the setup. We see Andrew Keegan see Bianca walk by, and that's when he pretty much kind of says he wants to do the whole, like he wants to nail her or something like that. He's like, I'm going to nail her, something like that. It's kind of the setup of I'm going to do this bet to try to get her in bed. So I just wanted to call that part out.
There was a bet to try to get her
There
in
wasn't
bed?
an actual bet. He was speaking to his friend, right? I don't know if you remember, Jillian, and he said like, I want to do this just for fun.
And his friend's like, you, not in a million years could you do it. And he's like, I'll prove you wrong. So it's not like a bet, but
Not a bet.
Okay.
Yeah. Or motivating like factor for why he's going after Bianca.
Can I just say one line that I thought was really funny?
Yeah.
In that same section, I think right before like Bianca and Gabriel Union hop in the car with Andrew Keegan, Gabriel Union says, I know you can be overwhelmed and you can be underwhelmed, but can you ever just be whelmed? I thought that was hilarious. Even now, it's like years later, I was like, that's funny.
I actually think she brings up one of the best points in the movie. That was her best line. Her only point in the movie was to bring up that topic. And I actually started to think, it's like, that's not a bad question to entertain.
Jillian, as a writer, can you be whelmed?
So let's see, if you're overwhelmed, underwhelmed. I mean, yeah, I guess so. I guess that's just like your base level, I guess, is you're just
the baseline.
Yeah.
Oh.
So my whelmed, my state of whelm, my whelm is at 4.
Yeah.
I think it'd be 5. You have to be in the middle. At least be a 5, Liz.
So
maybe 4 is underwhelmed.
maybe everyone has like their own unique whelm. Like we all have our own like standard, like this is our baseline.
Okay.
So then from there we can go over or under, but it's like unique to us. I don't know, maybe that's a thought there, that it could be, you know, based on the person.
Okay, so I think for the purpose of this discussion, whelm is a 5, overwhelmed is 6 and above,
Yes.
and 4 and below is underwhelmed.
That's perfect. I love
Okay.
it. We made the scale. We know it now.
And so it shall be. So we meet Mr. Stratford, or I should say Dr. Stratford.
Yes.
Their dad is an obstetrician, played by the brilliant comedian Larry Miller, who I once met.
Oh.
I didn't go up to him, but ate next to him at a table in a Mexican restaurant in Los Angeles.
Oh, that's cool. That's exciting.
Yeah. So, and he is overprotective. He's a single dad. And I wanted to ask, like, what's the deal with the mom? Because I thought she was dead. And then they mentioned later on,
Yeah.
she just left.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we don't know her story.
It was only hinted at. I think later on it's hinted at, like they say she's not coming back. And I'm like, I guess she's alive. Like it was never really explained.
His whole thing is he doesn't want his daughters to become pregnant, because apparently at this time in society, there were a lot of teenagers popping out babies, unwed
I guess so.
mothers.
I don't even remember that. Did you have like your dad give you a talking to, Jillian, and saying no?
No, not at all. My mom's a nurse. So I had,
Oh.
from a young age, a very practical and like, I don't know, like just very medical explanation of sex and pregnancy and all that. I feel like I lucked out where I didn't have like any sort of fear-based sex education. So
Oh, you are very lucky. That's
Okay.
cool.
So your mom, so nobody forced you to put on a pregnancy belly,
no,
as
no.
Mr. Stratford does later on.
Pregnancy scares me enough. I don't need the pregnancy belly. So all good.
As
Yes.
a person who had a child, I will say it's very scary. So there you go. At their home, we see Kat reading The Bell Jar.
Yeah.
And it is the biggest version of this book was humongous. It's like the set designer's like, no, we have to make it 5 times the size so people know that she is reading Sylvia Plath. Like we have to, it was so big.
It's funny you said that, because when I saw that, I remember saying to myself, gee, I didn't think it was that thick of a book, because I've seen it. I've not read it, but I've seen it in the bookstores. I was like, is that like a special version? You're right.
An edited
the prop,
copy.
the
It was
prop
funny.
master went to crazy town on that one.
That was hilarious. Yeah. I love that.
So we learn that Bianca and Kat live under one rule, or I should say 2 rules, but stated twice by the father, which is no dating till you graduate. So therein lies the rub, is that Bianca wants to date Joey. Joey wants to date Bianca. Cameron wants to date Bianca. So Bianca gets the dad to kind of reconsider. And he's like, okay, fine. Here's a new rule. Bianca can date when Kat dates. And being Kat has no interest in dating, the dad's like, well, then that settled that, because Kate's not going to date, you know.
It was a good strategy. It was a good strategy. It was a mean strategy, but it was a good strategy.
All right. So now Cameron becomes Bianca's French tutor, as we mentioned. And she reveals, I think, to Cameron that, oh, well, I can't date until my sister Kat dates.
Exactly.
And then, you know, the light bulb moment, Cameron is like, okay, we got to get Kat a date. So Cameron enlists the help of his friend Michael, who I think we mentioned before. He
lines up like a
Yeah.
group of different types of guys, I guess. All ages, all backgrounds. They're all like, no, she's crazy and disgusting.
And the
like,
word,
which is so funny, because I'm like, it's Julia Stiles. Like you know, like what's
but you know, the word that's bandied about is she's a bitch. So I mean, she must be called a bitch 100 times in this movie.
Was that a common thing back then? Because they did use it very casually all the time in this movie. Like, maybe that's
it was. I come from the age of bitch. Everything was bitch.
Well, that explains it, Liz.
It explains a lot about me. Thank you, Tiffany.
Which was used a lot more in this like movie than I feel like would ever be used in like a high school movie now.
Yes.
Way more explicit than any like contemporary teen rom-com would be. So it's kind of strange for it to be like more so in the 90s than it is now.
She doesn't
Yes,
let anyone
she
else's
does.
expectations of what she should do and what she should be influence her. And because of that, because of having her own mind and not following the herd, none of the guys want anything to do with her because they
She's
all
too
want
difficult.
a sheep like Bianca.
They all want Bianca. They all want Bianca. I forgot
all
what
want Bianca.
Heath Ledger referred to something like, I forgot what that line was. He says later on, he's like, everybody wants Bianca, but
Yes.
she's not.
I got it. It's what's up with, he goes, what is it about this chick? Well, I'm not crazy about he goes, what is it with this chick? Does she have beer flavored nipples?
Huh?
Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of stuff going on out of his mouth. And I was like, that doesn't make
I was like, first of all, that was a weird thing. But yeah, it's almost like even Heath Ledger's like, what is it about Bianca? So Cameron and Michael approach Heath Ledger, aka Patrick, because they figure, oh, he's someone shady who would probably be willing to just date someone because we'll pay him.
They approach him in shop class, I think, where he's dissecting a frog or something or other. Something like that. But
was that the frog scene?
I think that was the frog scene.
Include the frog scene. That is straight out of
Wasn't
my
it?
biology class in the 90s. Huh?
That's not when they approached him though. In the dissecting, like the frog dissecting class, they didn't approach him until shop class because that's
it.
Drilled through the French book.
That's
that's
right.
it.
That's right. He drills because that's right. He picks up his drill and he drills through the French book as if to say, "I'm not gonna date this chick just because you're asking me and everything." It was like edgy
because he had a drill. You're like, oh, he has a drill. He has a weapon.
You know how to? Hey, listen. When you just buy a house like I did, like. I love handy people. Like anyone who's handy and can wield a drill, I'm like, oh, that's hot.
It's confidence porn. It gets me every time.
That has come up more and more in discussions about romance. It is true. So right there, it's like, oh, he knows how to use a drill and he's not afraid to like damage a textbook.
He was making a stained glass window.
No, was it?
What?
That's funny. I like that touch.
Stained glass window. And I was like, what is going on? But like, I don't know. It works for me. I like it.
It was probably like a cut scene where we see like him take her to his shop where he has like all these these beautiful like vases or something or other. I'm assuming it was a cut scene, like which is like we learned he's an artist and etc.
So Cameron and Michael say we need to bring in a money man. They bring in Joey, who also has an interest. He's invested in this. Joey wants to date Bianca, so they're like, hey, listen. If we could get, Kat a date and she's dating, Bianca's free to date you. So why don't you give us some money to grease the palms of Patrick? So he agrees, and Patrick is offered $50 and accepts the $50.
I will say that Andrew Keegan approaches him on the soccer field, I believe, right? About the $50.
Yeah, I think so.
Can we talk about that soccer field? It's the biggest soccer field that I've ever seen in my life for a high school. What is this?
Do we know what building that actually is? Because that's no way it's actually high school.
There's no way that's a high school.
I don't know. That's a good question. It did seem really large.
It was humongous. It felt like a university style, like somewhere on the East Coast, mind you, not Seattle. I'm like, this feels very East Coast. Like, what's happening? It was huge. It was huge. And those stone steps, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, let's see. It was shot at a real high school in Tacoma, Washington.
Oh my goodness.
But it was built in the 1800s. So
that explains it. Whoa, that's cool. Oh my goodness. I would like to go there.
I really liked about it is that clearly the art director for it, like they picked this this location because it had so many like old world elements.
Yes.
So like even in the like bleacher scene where we're seeing him, and we'll get to that whole scene, there's like sort of medieval looking like flags hanging down, and like they have all this like ivy covered, and they clearly like set deck came in and they like really were trying to like take every element they could to like reference back to Shakespeare.
Now it's about Patrick getting Kat to agree to go out on a date with him. And that's the struggle.
He tries to talk to her, and I think she blows him off. She calls him a name.
She calls him Screwboy.
Is that what it was?
And you know what? It's funny is, wait a second, I just realized Screwboy, did she say that because he does shop class or because she thinks it's another way of her saying, oh, you're just the guy out to have sex?
Oh, I don't know.
Well, later in the movie, she said there's a rumor that you took a year off to do porn.
That's right. So that's probably why she
Oh.
called him Screwboy.
Oh, that's
Okay.
mean.
Yeah.
That's not very nice. That's mean.
Well,
That's
that's
the
what we
case.
learn about her is she's not.
I know, but
particularly-
that's unkind. If it was true, that would have been an
Yeah.
unkind thing to say, but all right, I guess so.
So
But she blows him off. And basically then we kind of see him like stalking her a
Yes.
little bit. And
he
he
just
follows
starts
her
popping up. Yeah.
to some store where once again he's just like, he's like, I like that you're not afraid of me. And it's just like, okay. When she sees Andrew Keegan, Joey,
Mhm.
on purpose directly park his car behind her.
Mhm.
And I think she does ask him to move, and he just kind of gets out and he's just like do. And then she proceeds to just ram her car into his car. Which is
Do you mind? Not at all.
I love that moment.
When she backs into Joey's car, like, he loves it. Like, there's a big old smile on his face. I think that's where he's like truly starting to be smitten with her. He's already falling for her at that point.
That's an interesting take because at
I
that point,
agree.
I just figured, oh, he's viewing her as more of a challenge, which she enjoys, but I didn't think that he was starting to fall for her. So that's interesting. That's very well could be.
I think that was the moment. He's just
Yeah.
like, here's a girl who doesn't put up with shit, and he likes it. That's the kind of girl he maybe would want to date.
Patrick eventually gets $100 per date. There's a renegotiation, but Cameron and Michael decide to coach Patrick on how to woo Kat.
Cameron
Yeah.
decides to do some recon, and he goes with
Yeah.
Bianca into Kat's bedroom and just kind of figure out what music she likes, what she's into. And what I remember, and even when I watched it the first time, I had the same thought. They open up Kat's drawer. Bianca finds a pair of black panties.
Yeah.
And she says, ooh, and he's like, oh, what is it? And he's like, that means she wants to have sex one day. And I'm like, it does? Even now as an adult. Even as a kid, I'm like, it does? I'm like, is that I had
Yeah.
no
Well, First
idea.
of all, she called it black lingerie. Weren't those just black cotton, like
Yeah.
bikini briefs?
It's just black underwear. It's just black underwear.
Tiffany, I had the exact same thought. Like, I distinctly remember first seeing, and I'm what, 12 or something at the time. It did like mess with my head for a second. I was like, oh my God, is there some like hidden code of underwear that adults have that I don't know? Like, makes no sense. I understand like the device that, like, I understand that it's meant
Yes.
that there's more to Kat than we're seeing.
Maybe red. If it was red, I would have given it to him a little bit more. But I'm like, black. And it was just one of those things that really like threw me. Like as a kid and as an adult, I'm like, black panties? What's going on?
Yeah.
For actual lingerie, and that would have made sense. Like, it was actual lingerie. It was so basic. I was like, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. They looked kind of ratty too. I was like, oh.
It was it didn't look ready, but what I like is that they go and they find Heath Ledger at a bar and they kind of like, this is what she likes, this is what she's into. And then once again, they said, if it helps, she has black panties, and he perks up. And I was like, again, with this black underwear.
So they tell, Heath Ledger, Patrick, she likes these particular rock bands. She's going to be at Club Skunk, watching her favorite band play. And to me, this is the sexiest thing. Patrick, Heath Ledger, shows up wearing these leather pants. He wears it with such like nonchalant confidence. I was like, oh my God, so sexy. I think they're blue. They're a little punk, little rock and roll. I was like, ooh. So he goes to like find her and, starts to see
That's
that her,
funny.
letting loose. She's dancing on the dance floor. He's like, oh, I'm kind of intrigued. And then plays very aloof when she
Yes.
notices him at the bar, and he plays it chill. And he charms her by saying, he listens to the same band she listens to. And that's when he invites her to Bogey Lowenstein's house for a party.
Bogey Lowenstein.
I love his name.
Bogey Lowenstein.
That name is classic. Bogey Lowenstein.
Bogey Lowenstein.
And I'm thinking it's because he's on the high school golf club, and bogey.
Oh, yes.
Bogey, I think, is a term in golf.
Yeah.
Bogey Lowenstein, first of all, looks like he's 42 years old.
Bogey Lowenstein.
So then we see her sister,
Wait.
Bianca.
I have a quick fun fact.
Oh, what's the fun fact?
Josh Hartnett and Ashton Kutcher were originally considered for the role of Patrick.
Oh,
Casting
my
directors were looking
goodness.
for an actor who had a little bit of edge along with some charm and charisma, so they went with Heath Ledger.
Huh.
What would the movie have been like without Heath Ledger?
Not as good.
Definitely not. as good.
I like Josh Hartnett, so I think that could have been okay with him. I like him. He's cute.
Maybe Josh Hartnett, but I still feel like maybe it would have been too dark and intense.
He's not always dark and intense.
Josh Hartnett is not charming. Ashton Kutcher is charming, but
no,
I don't
it would
think
have
he's
been
edgy.
too. No, he's not. He's like goofy. It's not the same.
Right, but he's not edgy. Yeah.
I think they made the right choice. I also like Josh Hartnett, but I do agree that he has like, I'm trying to think of like what roles I've seen him in where he would have like the lightness to play the
That's
more
fair.
funnier parts of this, or the like, you know, like to me, one of the really good deliveries he has is when in the pool bar where they're like Cameron's like, oh, bad news, she wants a pretty boy, and he's like,
Are you telling me I'm not a pretty guy?
oh, he plays it so well.
Yeah.
So I think they made the right choice, but I do get why the other two were probably up for it.
So Bianca basically tries sneaking out of the house. The dad sees her to go to this party, and the dad says, and more or less, I think Kat finally agrees that I'll go with you to this party. And I think the dad forces her to Bianca to wear the pregnancy belly. That's the first introduction to the pregnancy belly.
Yes.
I think that's very smart for young girls.
I have to mention that this was one of the snappiest exchanges. Gabrielle Union, the friend Chastity, and Bianca say that they're going to a study group of friends. And he's like, otherwise known as an orgy. And then Gabrielle Union is like, it's just a party. And he said, and hell is just a sauna. And I think that it's like a very quick exchange that I think is among some of the best dialogue. But go ahead.
That's
yes.
funny.
So Kat agrees to accompany her sister because that's the only way that he lets Bianca go. Correct?
That is correct. Yeah. And they make it to the party to Boogie's. Is it Boogie? Is that how you say it?
Bogey Lowenstein.
And it's this huge, massive party. Tons of kids. Somebody brought their own stereo, their own drinks.
Mm-hmm.
It's a huge event. It's pretty exciting.
Bogey didn't expect it. I think Michael screwed him over and like
That's
shared like the information. It was supposed to be like a intimate golf like soiree, I think. And then Michael shared it with the whole school. So they all showed up. So Bogey's all flummoxed and they go, oh, what's going on? So actually the party, the Bogey Lowenstein party is really the turning point. But in the relationship between Kat and Patrick. Kat starts viewing him a little bit differently. So she gets drunk because, she doesn't want to be at this party. Her sister is, goo-goo. Because I can't think of another word. Goo-goo, gaga over Joey. So she gets drunk, dances provocatively on the table, falls backward. Patrick catches her and he takes care of her for the rest of the night. Keeps her awake because she's afraid she has a concussion. I think this movie actually started that whole girl gets drunk, guy takes care of her trope. Because if you read a lot of romances that there's a scene where she gets drunk, he takes care of her.
If you want to talk about the things that are like in 10 Things I Hate About You that are also in Titan, even though they're very different stories.
Yeah.
Having the hero caretake, especially when like the heroine is not doing well, especially when she kind of fights against being taken care of, which is what happens in 10 Things I Hate About You. That absolutely happens in Titan. She's used to taking care of herself. She's suspicious when someone else is trying to do that. But of course, the hero is actually trying to do the right thing and allowing the heroine to like be her messy self and to be the person there to like take care of her and make sure nothing else happens to her. It's one of my favorite tropes is a caretaking trope. I love it so much. And it would surprise me if it comes from 10 Things I Hate About You.
Yeah,
And I'll say,
yeah, there's a strong caretaking component to his personality because he also mentions later on about him taking care of his grandfather.
Yeah.
My favorite line from the scene where they're swinging, I think they're on the swing set, and he's trying to keep her awake so she doesn't like slip into a coma from her supposed concussion, and she insults him, and he says, "Oh, you see there?" He goes, "Who needs affection when I have blind hatred?" And I think that's such a brilliant, it's such a great line, and he delivers it
that
so
is a
well.
good line.
And you know, she gets a look at him. She's like, "Oh, I think you have green flecks in your eyes." And now we're like, okay, she's starting to like fall for
She
him.
likes him. Yeah.
And then he drives her home, and she tries to kiss him, and he's like, "No," which again, something in romance novels, like, "No, you're drunk.
It's very
I don't want to
nice.
take advantage of you." Also, I think it's because he knows, you know, I'm getting paid, and you know, I'm not really on the level. Truly,
I thought that he was being a gentleman. She gets frustrated, which we see more later, and at the same
gets mad.
time, she gets mad.
Yeah.
We see that Cameron has driven Bianca home, and basically he tells her off, and he says, "Just because you're beautiful doesn't mean you can be rude," or something like that. And for some reason, that does it for her, and she decides to kiss him. She's like, "Oh, I like it when somebody stands up to me."
Yeah. She was also getting to like him better at the party because he's way more interesting than Joey the model, who only talks about himself and
Only
has
talks about modeling.
nothing to bring to the table. So the next day at school, Joey offers Patrick now $300 to take Kat to the prom.
He's up in the price.
That way, Bianca is free to go to the prom with Joey. So Patrick then stalks Kat again. And he follows her at the bookstore, finds her at the music shop, and sees her playing a guitar because, as she mentioned earlier to him, "Oh, I kind of want to have my own rock band." I mean, sure, why not? Kat's pissed off at Patrick. And then Cameron tells Patrick, "Listen, if you want to make things better, you've got to embarrass yourself because she must be embarrassed because you wouldn't kiss her." So this leads to the most iconic scene of the movie.
It's true.
Which is Patrick, aka Heath Ledger, singing, and he does sing himself. It is him singing. "Can't Take My Eyes Off of You" from the bleachers while Kat is at soccer practice.
Trust in me when I say, "Oh, pretty baby."
That was a great moment because everyone stops, and of course then the band starts playing, and he's like dancing along. And I feel like, I don't know how it was for you, Jillian, but that was, I think, the moment that a lot of people kind of fell for Heath Ledger was him singing that song and being romantic.
I remember actively trying to find that version of the song,
so
which I don't think they put out, but I was like, I gotta find that version. Which, by the way, this whole soundtrack is a fantastic soundtrack.
Oh, it's fantastic, yeah.
But I was really looking for that one. I don't like big romantic gestures like that. That is not normally something I care for in rom-coms. But this one, I think, worked for me. I think because he is a character who would not normally do this, and it is really embarrassing for him. And so I don't know, I guess the humiliation does it for me, but
right. I mean, also I feel like it was easier for me to accept this big gesture because a lot of times I find the grand gesture a bit cheesy, is that it didn't happen at the very end. It wasn't a last ditch effort to get her back. It was, so I like that it was stuffed kind of like, you know, maybe a little bit past the midway point. "Can't Take My Eyes Off You" by Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons was not originally in the running to be used in the movie.
Oh, that's interesting.
It was down to 2 songs. "I Think I Love You" by the Partridge Family.
I think I love you, so what am I so afraid of?
Oh my God.
And "I Touch Myself" by Divinals.
I don't want anybody else. When I think about you, I touch myself.
Oh no.
So
I could see the second one, not the first one.
Well, that's the one the screenwriter settled on, was "I Touch Myself" by the Divinals. But the day of the shoot, Heath Ledger chose the Frankie Valli classic.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
Yeah. So he's the one who decided. And in the end, everyone agreed that it was a more romantic choice.
It was classic. And because of this, he gets thrown in detention. And for some reason,
Oh,
she
that's
comes
why he
in.
ends up in detention. I didn't put that connection
He did
together.
something romantic, so they threw him in detention.
I didn't
And for
realize
some
that.
reason, Kat has to come in
Oh God.
and talk to
Oh,
her
geez.
soccer coach and flash him
Yeah.
in order to get Heath Ledger to escape out the window. And I was
Yeah.
like, I remember watching it even as a kid. I'm like, really? You're just going to flash here? Because of that, he gets out and they go on a bunch of dates. They go paddle boating. They go balloon, like a paintball. Is that what it is?
Paintball with like paint balloons.
Balloons,
It's not
though.
with the guns.
With
Yeah.
balloons, yeah. I like that though. And then they end up making out. I think that's the first makeout scene that we have with the two of them.
Yeah, they do the whole we're falling and laughing together trope, and then we kiss. You know, I really felt the passion in that kiss. That was
Yeah.
the kiss.
It was a good kiss. And
It was
I
a good
feel
kiss.
like, you know, we don't get a lot of like really passion. I was watching I think your first episode of this, which was You Got Mail. Maybe I have the wrong one.
yeah,
And
yeah, it
talking
was.
about how like lackluster that kiss was, which was like the whole movie was leading up for.
Yeah, that's true.
And so we get this kiss, which is just sort of like a throwaway. They're rolling in the
Yeah.
hay. And it was like, yeah, I feel the chemistry there. They were like,
Oh, yeah.
they really brought it to it. So I
Oh, yeah.
appreciated it.
There's nothing like being messy and kissing. That's the other thing. I like
that's
being
cute.
messy with paint, just like being, you know, rain, caught in
Mhm.
rain.
Oh, yeah,
and
that's
just-
true.
Like
That's
I thought,
true.
you know,
Out of
paint-
sorts.
Yeah, like paint. Yeah. So anyway, after the date, they're still together. They're talking, and he asks her to go to the prom.
Mhm.
Okay. And she's like, I don't do proms. And he keeps pushing it. And then she gets mad because she's like, what's your ulterior motive? And
Yeah.
she storms off. She's mad at him for that.
Kind of gaslights her. Is like, why do I need a motive? It's like, he's
Yeah, I know, that-
gaslighting
I know,
her.
yeah.
One thing that came up though is that Bianca's kind of sad because she wants to, I
to
think, go to
prom.
prom, and that's when we find out the history from
Mhm.
Kat, that Kat and Joey dated
Yeah.
a long time ago. I guess maybe the 9th grade, and she had sex with him. That was the first person she had sex with, and she kind of freaked out, and because of that, she basically stopped doing what other people thought she should do. And
Mhm.
that's like her whole reason for the dislike between the two
Right.
of them. She'd also mentioned
Yeah.
that her mom had just left. So I think it was like a
Mhm.
mix of the mom leaving and the
It wa-
pressure.
right. It was like kind of there was a lot going on in her life. And then after the heart to heart she has with Bianca, because Bianca's mad at her too, because you know, if you don't go to the prom, I don't go to the prom.
So after they kind of get into a fight after that story, and then we see Bianca go and sit on a tire swing outside, and Kat sees her, and a Counting Crows song comes on. Do you remember that? I was like, what's happening? It was like this Counting Crows song came
It was
on all of a sudden. It
really?
was Counting Crows. I'm pretty sure it was Counting Crows.
I was
yeah.
confused by that scene because wasn't she it's like on a swing wearing Mary Janes? And I was like, oh, is she supposed to be like little and this is a memory?
That's what I thought. I thought because she was dressed so young, and I think she has like ribbons in her hair.
Yeah.
too, that I was like, wait, is this like a flashback of her just sort of still viewing Bianca as like her little sister, as being a child?
I think.
And not like it's not actually happening. It's just her like remembering, but it's really unclear.
Yeah.
It's probably very unnecessary.
Everyone does go to the prom.
Yes.
Do not fear. Bianca, Cameron, Patrick, Kat, Joey is there with Gabrielle Union, aka Chastity, who
Yeah.
all of a sudden turns on Bianca on a dime. It's like, you're not my friend anymore, and I'm going to show you my true colors.
We saw it sprinkling in throughout the movie of her like, oh, I'll take a ride home, and etc.
That's true.
I saw it as just like, this is what Kat was rebelling against. You know,
Yeah.
she was part of the popular crowd. She saw how sort of like two-faced and not sincere they were, and so she left it. But now Bianca is having to deal with the fact that like within the popular crowd, your friends aren't really your friends. It's all just kind of trying to like one up each other and be
True.
the coolest. Yeah.
Right.
It is true though. I mean, that's
Very
basically
true.
what happened. And then Chastity revealed that Heath, or I guess what's his real name, Patrick,
Mhm.
Heath.
been paid by Joey to date her sister.
Yeah. And on the dance floor, Patrick surprises Kat by bringing in her favorite band.
I just called in a
Mhm.
favor, and I
I
just
called
know
in a
your
favor.
favorite band.
Yeah.
He's
And
like, okay.
at that point, Joey comes over to Patrick and he's pissed off and he starts yelling at him because he's mad that paying off Patrick was supposed to yield dates with Bianca, but it hasn't gone that way. He's not at the prom with Bianca, and he starts yelling, and he's like, "Oh, I paid you to date Kat." So, and like everything comes out, and that's when Kat hears it, and she feels like their whole relationship was a lie. And Joey then gets into it with Cameron. He punches Cameron, and then Bianca delivers two face punches to Joey in defense of her man Cameron, and then knees him in the groin.
That's for making my day bleed. That's for my sister. And that's for me.
I think it's like my favorite Bianca moment because she's not particularly likable. In this movie, but that moment you're like, okay, well, now you've redeemed yourself.
Yes, that was the point at which I was like, okay, I could get behind Bianca now, and I know she'll do right by Cameron.
From that point on, we basically have Kat being sad about the whole Heath Ledger thing. It ends with her in class getting ready to fulfill her class assignment to do a poem. Kat reads the poem, which is 10 Things, which is where we get the title from, 10 Things She Hates About You. And she lists off the different things. And one of the things she says is that I hate that you didn't call, which made me think, like, he didn't call her? He didn't call her after this? I was like, what? At the end of it, she's crying and she says, and most of all that I hate that I don't really hate you at all. And I thought, well, that's sweet. And she's crying. But at the same time, I'm thinking, like, he legit never ever called. I kind of got stuck on that. As an adult woman, as a kid, I didn't care. But as an adult, I was like, he should have called.
Don't forget, this was 1999. So I don't think everyone, cell phones weren't as widely used. So maybe
they have home phones. They have a house
phone. But maybe he thought that was too impersonal. I don't know.
I thought it was, he felt like he fucked up so big that he didn't think that there was any coming back until he heard the poem. That's what I thought. Because then we get the scene of the action he takes afterwards to win her back. So I interpret it as, I screwed up so big. There's no way that she will take me back. And then the poem gives him hope.
Okay.
I like
that makes sense why he didn't
That's
call.
more optimistic.
I was thinking he couldn't get to a phone. I actually thought he was poor. So I was like, maybe he didn't have a phone in his house. And that's why. And
he's not poor. He's just inconsiderate.
All right. He kept doing all these things for money. So I thought he was poor. Fun fact, Julia Stiles, in that scene where she's reading the sonnet, those tears were not in the script. They were improvised. In fact, she didn't even expect to cry. She, got so deeply in touch with the character's emotions in that moment that she cried. So, nice. and they did that in one take. That was one take. She did it and they kept it. And honestly, I think that was one of the most authentic moments in the movie. It choked me up. And seeing his reaction to her tears is really great and really touching because you know that he didn't expect her to cry. So his reaction to her being kind of stunned that this was happening was also very authentic. So I loved that whole scene is just fantastic. And also knowing that, she hates how much he makes her feel because she doesn't want to feel,
And no, just another sudden realization of what is similar to Titan is Juliana very much hates how good Titan makes her feel and really, really resists that in the book. And I think that is a pretty consistent thing that I enjoy writing, is a hero who is more of the pursuer and a little bit more outward with their emotion, and the heroine who is much more internal with their emotion and struggles with being comfortable and expressing it. And that is absolutely a Kat in this, in 10 Things I Hate About You, who's like, oh, you're making me feel things. I want to feel those things.
Yes, that is a great parallel between Titan and the movie. So after that moment, Kat goes running to her car. I guess she's done with school for the day. And she finds waiting for her a guitar. I think it's a Stradivarius, which we are led to believe he used the money that he made dating her to buy this guitar. At least that's the conclusion I drew to it. Yeah. And, he's standing over her kind of looking, and she forgives him instantly. Yeah. So then, they kiss and everything is all is well in Padua once again. The title, 10 Things I Hate About You, was actually based on the screenwriter's diary entries. So the screenwriter, Karen McCullough, revealed that she kept a diary during her high school days that depicted all of the things she didn't like about her boyfriend at the time. Aww. And she discovered the diary when she was trying to think up a title for the movie.
Oh, I like that. That's super cute.
Yeah. Jillian, is there anything else that you'd like to add?
People should rewatch it if they haven't. I think it holds up pretty well. Yeah, there's some word choices that are not great, but but I think in general, I watched it last night with my boyfriend who's never seen it before, and he was like really into it. It worked well for him too. So
thank you so much, Jillian, for joining us here on Romance Rewind.
Thank you so much for having me.